I am so sick of cynical stories. I've never been a fan of them, really. Since I was a kid, my parents were only allowed the most goody-two-shoes, optimistic media in our lives. So it always came as a shock to me whenever I came across these wretched, grimdark stories that always felt so sure of themselves. Others around me praised them as refreshing and realistic, but to me, they were just dark and hard to watch. That's what a childhood growing up on Nintendo games and Saturday morning cartoons will do to a person. So it came as no shock to me that one of the most resonant and impactful films of this year would be a film simply about a man that refuses to let people suffer, to let innocents die under the veil of complexity or geopolitics. It's wild that in a world full of media with world-ending stakes, constant rewrites of timelines, and multiverse shenanigans, the film that feels the most radical and most boundary-pushing is one that simply has a main hero say, "No, I'm not going to just sit around and let innocent people die." After the 2010s era, where superhero movies were trying to outdo each other with their own grittiness and realism, each movie is ashamed of their own source material, citing it as too childish or unrealistic in today's times. Well, look at us now. The biggest film of this year features an unapologetic Paragon character, a character archetype that I've always loved in fiction. But for some reason, in the mainstream, most people saw these types of characters as boring or lame, because obviously, there can't be any conflict in your story if your characters aren't all amoral monsters that think only of themselves, right? But I never thought this way. To me, characters like All Might, Sonic, Superman, they were always the most interesting characters in the story to me. I often found the villains either way too scary as a kid, or just plain uninteresting as an adult. And this film shows us why Paragon characters work so well. Their simplistic and unapologetic morality is specifically what makes them so interesting, in a world as cynical and apathetic as ours. In this film, Superman gets beaten up, made a fool of, constantly under pressure and doubt with his own actions, but he never gives in to despair. He never gives up hope. And that is his real superpower, his power to inspire others to do the same. That's what makes Paragon characters so perfect and interesting in my eyes. It's the easy thing to give up. It's easy to get jaded and depressed when things get rough, to look at the world in all its ugliness and say it's beyond saving. But to look back in that abyss, to look through all of that adversity and still face it with a smile on your face, that's the real maturity right there. Nothing lame or shameful about that. It's actually modern society that has become the issue in regards to modern cynicism in our institutions and media. The stuff that makes us believe that the concept of a Superman is childish in nature, that even the concept of it is born from the head of a naive person that doesn't understand how the world really works, and that cynicism is the actual smart and mature way to view the world. It's that exact message, the collective gaslighting of people over the decades, that this movie perfectly refutes with its thesis. In the movie, the main villain Lex Luthor isn't some misunderstood billionaire or sympathetic antagonist that secretly has humanity's best interests at heart. Nah, he's just an irredeemable sociopath that will stop at nothing to get at Superman, to prove that he's not real, that the myth is fake, that he is no man just like us, but an alien conqueror meant to exploit humanity for his own gains. Lex Luthor speaks so ill of Superman because he thinks of him as the same way Lex really is. Lex speaks on behalf of all humanity despite him being so out of touch with what the average human experiences. He has such a distrust and hatred of the institutions and of Superman because he believes that Superman is just as self-centered and self-motivated as he is. That every human at the end of the day is just like him. That hatred and envy, it comes from the reality that Lex is wrong, that all humans aren't as selfish and evil as he is. That someone can in fact have all the power in the world and still be compassionate and selfless. It eats away at him, it destroys him, because he knows that deep down, for all his bloviating and blustering, Superman is much more of a human being than he ever was, despite the fact that he's literally an alien. The movie does such a good job of addressing just everything about the Superman mythos in a way that is more topical and relevant than ever in today's climate. In the film, you literally have a fictional country of Arabia invading the poor nation, something objectively evil and nonsensical, of course. Superman stops them because they are going to kill innocent people, but Lois is there in the mock interview scene to show how a cynical and greedy high society will interpret Superman's unequivocally just actions. And she pulls out every dishonest trick in the book. The disingenuous framing, shifting the goalposts, saying Superman acted without authority, claiming he was acting as a US asset, saying that Arabia was actually liberating the country from terrorists, etc., etc. All the scummy deflection tactics real news media uses to justify its atrocities. I was actually in shock with how realistic it was and how disgusted Superman become, because he should be, everyone should. Here you had this man simply acting, not because of some dumb geopolitical treaty, not because of some BS military contract or anything like that. He simply moved because people were going to die if he didn't. And that's not the type of morality that modern society is used to anymore. And so it can't accept that somebody like Clark Kent really exists, that he's genuine without some ulterior motive. It's only until we get to that scene at the end of the movie where Lois Lane meets his family and sees Superman sleep on his twin bed as if he was just a little Boy Scout again, that she realizes he's the real deal. He actually believes the stuff he says and it's not a front. That scene was simply beautiful. And I just love how unsubtle the movie is with its messaging, how unafraid it is to wear its heart on its sleeve. The Moravia-Jahanpur conflict is so obviously supposed to be a stand-in for Israel-Palestine conflict, or even the Russian-Ukraine one, as the main government leader has a thick Russian accent. A really bold choice for a superhero movie nowadays, because is that politics in my superhero movie? Oh no! As if Superman wasn't created by two Jewish immigrant kids living through the rise of Nazism in the 1930s. As if most comics weren't released during the 20th century and didn't have blatant political messaging going through them from the get-go. No one made comics political. The world has just become so wretched and cynical that the simple showcasing of a hero stopping innocent murder of children and not justifying it simply because they're brown is seen as this bold political statement in today's world. How far we have fallen as a species. One of the many reasons why this movie is hitting so damn hard at the moment. And don't even get me started on all the other amazing things this film does. I can dive into the gorgeous cinematography, how each conversation and action sequence is shot in such a saturated and sincere manner, the vulnerability of Superman being on full display in each fight scene. It's never just about beating up the bad guy. It's always about him trying to save as many people as possible. Remember when superheroes used to just save people? Before all of the clashing timelines, the multiverse BS, we had superheroes just busting up landlords, stopping war profiteers, and beating up real, actual evil that exists in the real world, instead of this abstracted Hollywood kind. The thing that was so refreshing to see that this movie had was that the real stakes in the third act weren't the world is ending stuff that we've seen a billion times before, but instead the simple, this third world nation will inevitably suffer immensely if Superman doesn't get there in time. It somehow grounds the story so much in a world that literally has a man that can fly at the speed of sound and is invincible. It's also refreshing because I cannot tell you how many times I've seen the rights and threats of minorities get overwritten for the greater good, as if to say, sorry you oppressed group of people, the world's about to end, we don't have time to fix your problems. It's reactionary, because it creates a convenient excuse for the status quo. Even though this film does still have its world-ending stakes, Lex Luthor tries to create a rift portal to distract Superman while Moravia conquers Jahanpur. The film actually counters this by having the Justice Gang save Jahanpur in Superman's stead, which is both a great evolution of the genre, but also serves as amazing character development for the Justice Gang, as up until this point, they refuse to get into any geopolitical affairs because they don't want to make the Justice Gang political. But in the end, they realized that saving innocent people was never about politics. It was always the rich and powerful making the saving of innocent lives political, not them. It's such a beautiful scene and optimistic. God, I love this movie. This climax brilliantly shows how evil isn't the mustache-twirling villain in the dark, but the mass cynicism that the rich and powerful benefit from. The idea that if you constantly fear your neighbors, think that everyone is secretly just looking out for themselves, that you'll never stand up to them, stand up for what's right. And that's the ultimate myth that this movie shatters. Cynicism doesn't benefit you. It doesn't make you more mature or smart. In reality, you're just gullible to the same narratives, just framed differently. It's cynicism that'll make people look at a guy like Superman and think he has ill intent, but not the billionaire that controls an entire government operation. It's the cynicism that makes Lex Luthor so powerful and the thing that Clark Kent has to overcome. It's cynicism that makes you think a homeless person on the street just wants money to use for drugs, but don't even bat an eye at the billion-dollar corporation that gets a $1 trillion tax bailout from the government. And it's Superman's ability to inspire hope in people that is his real superpower, not the super speed or laser vision. The answer to Lois Lane's proposition at the beginning of the film was that she was wrong, that Superman was the real deal, and that it may look goofy to us, a man that drinks hot cocoa to calm down when stressed, a man that still believes in Santa Claus, a man that without a second thought would turn himself into the most powerful nation on the planet just to save a dog. That seems so alien to us because we're the real aliens. Clark Kent is more human than most of us, and that's the most profound message that this movie was trying to say. That Superman intervening in the conflict at the beginning of the movie, it was obviously the right thing to do, but that we as a society have just forgotten that. The film is trying to say that everyone was already naturally like Superman, but it got beaten out of us, either through the horrors of real life or just through personal experience. The film says no, cynicism isn't natural. It isn't the smart or mature thing for humans to do, and in fact drives us apart more than ever. Cynicism is the mask of fear and trauma, and optimism and sincerity, that's the natural state of humanity. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I love Paragon protagonists so much. Their simple, bold-faced morality isn't boring, but in fact the opposite. It's the dull and complacent apathy that we've been brainwashed into accepting as the norm. That's the real boring and lame character trait. To be kind, to love, to help in any way you can, to care. That is the real mature mindset and actual revolutionary storytelling. And in the beautiful words of the film itself, that is the new punk rock.